Hi everyone, it's Chenzo from Reality Art Pod here to talk about the Traitors Season 3 finale titled The Day of Reckoning is Upon Us. Last week on the Traitors, after Tom was ironically revealed to be faithful, the players competed for the power of the seer, and the episode ended with a cliffhanger, with Brittany's vote deciding Ivor and Danielle's fates. Before I dive in, I put a link in the description to my playlist where you can catch up on my previous Traitors recaps. If you like the content, consider liking and subscribing. My videos aren't meant to replace watching the original content, so if you missed the episode, I encourage you to seek it out on Peacock to enjoy and form your own opinion. But let's dive into it. We pick back up where we left off with Brittany in her effed situation and revealing her vote. Brittany shockingly votes for Danielle, and Danielle says she did it to her again. Brittany starts breaking down and thanks Danielle for reconnecting with her on the show. Danielle addresses the group, thanking everyone except Brittany and revealing she's a traitor with a hair flip. Danielle tells us she should have killed Brittany as Brittany continues to honestly real cry at the table as the faithful gather around Brittany and hug her. So we lose Danielle here, who preseason I had wanted and predicted to be a traitor. I felt she'd play a no holds barred game either way. She gets there and comes face to face with her rival Brittany, but they immediately mend fences, with Danielle having a soft spot for Brittany, but she also connected with Bob the Drag Queen and Dylan that showed that even though she wanted to play a cutthroat game, she still played with a lot of heart. So I'm not totally convinced that all of her tears were fake, but crying and acting insane was actually a great strategy for her. Throughout the season, viewers commented about how terrible a traitor she was, probably because those viewers wouldn't play a game like her, but other players felt she was acting so unlike a typical traitor that they didn't suspect her. So to an extent, she did push the gameplay forward for future seasons to give traitors a new way to play. I found it innovative. The real biggest flaw in her game was the rivalry with Carolyn, which was a mutual mismanagement that led to them both having so much suspicion on them. Had they worked together even for a little while longer, they would have both placed better. She said she should have killed Brittany. I don't agree. While Brittany was the ultimate vote to cast her away, she did a great job bringing Brittany along all season. Brittany's allyship and voting together helped them through a lot of the votes near the end, and I think Brittany was the right person for her to recruit. When we think back to this season, we're gonna think of Danielle, so love her or hate her, you have to acknowledge that she made for some great TV, and I'll be shocked if she doesn't take on House of Villains next. Brittany tells us there was no way she could have kept going with Danielle. She had to let her go. Alan reminds the group that this is the last time they'll reveal the identity of the eliminated player, and he announces that Brittany won the Seer twist. She'll get to pick one player who has to reveal their true identity to her in private. Alan takes Brittany into the bookcase to make her decision, leaving all of the faithfuls alone in the study. They're all impressed with Danielle's acting, and Dylan suspects that if Brittany's a traitor, she'll accuse whoever she brings in with her of being a traitor. Brittany summons Gabby to the one-on-one dinner, which they compare to a bachelor date. It gets a bit tense. Gabby is worried about being framed in the game, and Brittany tells her that she's looking to confirm someone's identity. Brittany reveals that Gabby is obviously faithful, and they cheers to it, but Dylan tells the other faithful that if Brittany says Gabby's a traitor, they're gonna have to banish both of them. The next morning at breakfast, Dylan is ready to figure this out. Ivor trusts Dylan and wants to go to the end. Gabby and Brittany enter together, and Brittany gives a cliffhangery speech telling them that Gabby is a faithful. Gabby seems pretty won over by Brittany and feels like a traitor wouldn't have done that. Maybe she owes Brittany one. Dylan is rethinking his theory of Brittany being a traitor now too. Brittany tells us she made this decision because she knew that falsely accusing Gabby would have resulted in them both being banished, and Alan enters in a plum, shiny suit and a wide brim hat looking like he's about to audition for The Voice. He asks them if they've got the skills to pay the bills and to get ready for their final mission. For my best dress at breakfast, for the first time, I'm gonna give it to Dolores. I love this red suit, and I thought it was funny that it was almost exactly Alan's suit. After breakfast, in the kitchen, Ivor and Dylan tell Gabby that there must be traitors left in the game. They think it's sus that Dolores hasn't been voting for traitors, and she was the only person who voted with Danielle at the last roundtable. Dylan pulls Brittany for a chat, probing her about Danielle being mad at her on the way out. Dylan says he knows what a good actor is from being an Efron, and he thinks Brittany's acting. Brittany can tell that Dylan is sus of her, and tells us her best bet would be to try to get the girls to band together and vote out the guys. Dolores might be planning to vote for Ivor. These two don't seem to like each other, but Dylan is trying to get them on the same page to vote out Brittany. Brittany plants the seeds with Gabby against Dylan, with Brittany telling us she's battle ready heading into this final roundtable. But first, Alan tells them they need to find hidden antique cars and gold, and gives them a scroll with a clue to help them find the hole. They're given clues with little riddles, and on the way to the challenge, Dylan and Ivor are alone in their car, where Dylan proposes a new theory that both Gabby and Brittany are traitors. They travel all the way out to their destination, where Comp Queen Brittany helps them solve one math problem, and they quickly find the money and the cars. Then they're all driven in separate cars through the countryside back to Alan. This was such an easy task for them, and when they get back, Alan reveals that an effing helicopter has been hiding behind him, and gives them the opportunity to double the $25,000 that they easily won. They'll each have to dangle underneath the helicopter, and toss bags, each worth $2,500, into a ring of fire. If they get it within the ring, they'll double the money of the bag. Brittany and Dolores go first. This looks terrifying. Dolores says they're shitting their pants. To make matters worse, they both miss their first toss, but they both get their second toss, and add $10,000 to the pot. Ivor goes alone and triumphantly celebrates as he misses his first toss, but gets his second, winning $5,000. Finally, Dylan and Gabby take off, getting one from both of their tosses, winning $10,000. Gabby loves her time in the sky with Dylan and tells us not to tell anyone she said that. In total, they won $37,500 for the pot, bringing the grand prize to $204,300. Back at the castle, they get back to strategizing. The women meet in the kitchen where Brittany tells them that Danielle had a big reaction when Dylan voted for her, and Dylan and Danielle were very close, trying to frame Dylan as a traitor. Dylan tells Ivor that he's voting for Brittany, but in the kitchen, Brittany tells Dolores that Dylan is going to vote everyone out until he's in the final two with Gabby. Dylan tries to campaign to Gabby, and Brittany really goes hard promising Dolores that she would never betray her. So they head to the round table, all dressed to the nines, with best dressed being Gabby in this black sparkly superhero catsuit. Alan opens the floor to the players. Gabby thanks Brittany for not throwing her under the bus as the seer. Ivor accuses Dolores of being a traitor. Dolores argues that she doesn't have it in her DNA to lie and be a traitor, and she turns it right back on Ivor. Ivor says he grew up being told not to do anything that would get him in a newspaper, which is why he wouldn't do anything nefarious on TV. Dylan lays out the case for Brittany, saying Derek and Rob accused her, and that Brittany and Danielle could have been traitors together to have a storybook ending. Brittany turns it against Dylan, saying Danielle reacted when Dylan voted for her, and that Dylan tried hard to win the seer power to protect himself. Dylan has better points, but Brittany makes a better argument, and Dylan gets really agitated and upset that Brittany accuses him. Brittany is going off with her receipts, giving a much more passionate fight than him. Ivor says that Brittany would be the meekest of all traitors. Brittany gets annoyed that Ivor calls her meek. The men and Brittany are squabbling as Gabby and Dolores watch on from the sidelines. And they get to voting. Dolores tells us for the first time she's going to vote with her brain and not her heart. And when the votes come in, Brittany votes for Dylan, but everybody else votes for Brittany. So Brittany is banished, and on the way out, she calls Dylan too smart and lovable. So we lose Brittany here. I had expected her to be underestimated because she's never won a show or made a finale, and I'd predicted her to be a faithful. She does a great job at the premiere, giving Danielle what I would call a really great example of a good, honest apology. The producers probably wanted this feud to last a little while longer, but it just gets squashed and they work together. But after that, Brittany has a concerning quiet edit for a few episodes, though I guess now I don't feel like a winner's edit is really a thing on the show. And Brittany wasn't doing much until Derek wrongfully accused her on the way out, which was just a bad read on Derek's part. That put a lot of stank on her in the game though. I was expecting her to be banished shortly after that, but she benefited from having a good social game and there being so many suspicious players that were already on people's hit lists. Coming into the final episodes, she was right. The situation was pretty effed. She was going to get voted out by affiliation with Danielle, whether she was a faithful or a traitor, because they were always going to banish her if they caught Danielle as a traitor first. And she made her first ever finale here. While I'm a Brittany stan and apologist, changing her vote in that tie was really silly. Given that Danielle leaving and exposing herself as a traitor really dooms Brittany, she needed to go all in with keeping Danielle. And I still believe that Dolores would have stayed loyal to Danielle because Danielle swore in her grandkids. After Danielle's banishment, even though Brittany was kind of toast, I think she plays this last round pretty optimally strategically, and ultimately I found her to be a delight as usual. She hasn't missed a step with confessionals, and she becomes the highest placing Big Brother player to ever play. Across 4 seasons of reality TV, she averages around 5th place, whereas Rob averages 7th and Tony averages 10th, so she really shouldn't be slept on as a player, and every time she comes back, she is a better player, but I think she'll look back at this one as the one she really could have won. The final 4 players, all faithful, meet at the Fire of Truth, where Alan is wearing his Infinity Stone Pashmina. They'll each decide to throw a pouch into the fire to either end the game or banish again. If even one player picks banish again, they'll all vote to banish a player from the game. Dylan votes to end the game, which causes Dolores to shoot big looks at Gabby. Ivor and Gabby vote to end it too, and after a cliffhanger, Dolores also votes to end the game, and they all reveal their roles, all saying faithful, ending with Dylan, who reveals himself as a faithful, and they all lose their shit in a satisfying ending where Ivor, Dolores, Gabby, and Dylan all win and split $204,300. And when Alan reveals that Brittany was a traitor, they stand themselves and celebrate. I wasn't expecting 4 winners, and overall, I do think it's unwise to end the game with 4 people, even if you're confident that you're all faithful. But I do feel these 4, each in their own way, did a good job of consistently proving they were faithful along the way. So let's talk about these 4 winners. Firstly, Ivor, who I felt was cast because of his royal affiliation. I'd predicted him to be a loyal faithful. He was the most invisible of the winners throughout the game. I often forgot he was on the show, and had the traitors not been playing so erratically, they would have murdered quiet players like Ivor. While I wouldn't play the game like him personally, it ended up working for him, and he survived his way through the game. He made himself look faithful by consistently holding court at the round table, announcing at the beginning of a few round tables, tonight it's going to be this person or that person, and it would go exactly like he said. A lot of this was right place, right time, as after Boston Rob's banishment, they assumed that the rest of the traitors were women. Ivor was completely cleared in everyone's mind as a suspect, and they would go on to never banish another man after Boston Rob. Rob. And they were right. Had the traitors murdered him instead of Tom, I do think Tom takes his place as a winner, which would have been so much better for the plot. And Dolores, who preseason I felt was smart, unsuspicious, relatable, but boring. But of all the housewives who graced the castle, I felt she had the most potential to do well in the game. She advertised herself as a great detective with B-roll shots of her doing investigative notes in the mirror with her lipstick, but she never really successfully investigates much. She has a rough start to the game with her other housewives getting eliminated early, which really pisses her off, and she spends a good chunk of time voting for Tom because she just didn't like him. She tries to keep Danielle at 6, and she should be thanking her lucky stars that Brittany changed her vote because there's a universe where Dolores stays loyal to Danielle and looks really stupid at the end of this episode. She finally proclaims she's going to use her brain for once in the game at Final 5. Crazy to admit that out loud, but she votes for Brittany, and while there were suspicious things that Dolores did, I do think she did convince them that she didn't have it in her to lie. She even swore on her family to Danielle, but I guess we don't care if people do that if they're telling the truth. She becomes the first housewife to win the show, which is cool. I'm happy that happened. I had good vibes for Gabby coming into the season, feeling she'd be fun, and I wanted her to be a traitor so bad. Even as a faithful, she still proved to be a fun character. I liked her more here than any of her previous shows, and as the show was airing, her social media was blowing up at the same time. Doing Traitors was such a good move for her. She proved to be smart, telling us early she didn't care if Nikki was a traitor because she's her friend, and I was impressed when she went against the grain in the West vote to actually vote for Rob. She held her own in a roundtable showdown with Danielle, and was able to set aside her rivalry with Dylan, someone who had consistently voted for her, to get to this finale. While there was suspicion of her coming into this episode, Brittany did Gabby a huge service clearing her with the seer twist, which pretty much guaranteed that Gabby wasn't going to get banished from the Final 5 on, leading to her win here. Ahead of the Fire of Truth, Gabby tells Alan that if she wins, it'll help her get married, and she did marry her girlfriend after she won, which is really lovely. I will apologize if I'm wrong on this channel, and I truly owe an apology to Dylan Efron. I started the season feeling like Dylan was a nepo bro, and I didn't think he was going to be smart, probably judging a book by its cover, but I just couldn't imagine that anyone who's friends with Harry Jousey could have a brain cell to spare. But yeah, I'm aware that Dylan's section of my cast assessment is so wrong and cringe. He really came into his own here and became one of the breakout stars of the season. I was shocked to hear he actually watched all of the gamers shows before coming on, which I wasn't expecting, and he quickly cozied up to Boston Rob, which was very wise knowing how Rob plays. He had all the gamers protecting him and sharing information with him, which made him seem like a leader of the faithfuls, but after Rob left, Dylan's game goes off the rails for a little while. The stray votes for Gabby were wild, but potentially on purpose to avoid being murdered, as the traitors will probably never off the person who's throwing random votes out there. Dylan comes into the Fire of Truth with the most heat on him, having just been targeted by Brittany in the previous roundtable. After that, I don't know if I would have been as generous as the other faithfuls here, and I probably would have banished him at 4 just to be safe, but he did enough to convince them, and of the 4 winners, I think he did the most heavy lifting in the game and in challenges to actually earn this win. He also owns some of the best knitwear I've ever seen. All in all, this season was the best one so far. Where season 2 fizzled out midway, season 3 had consistent intrigue from beginning to end. They're really finding random relevant people like Tom, Dylan, and Sam, who I felt were just doing this to get on a show, but had genuine interest in playing the game. I enjoyed the rivalry between Danielle and Brittany, but for next season, I either want to see less players with long history and beef, or a lot more players with history and beef to really make it a clusterfuck. But that's all I have to say about this episode. I'll be back in a few hours with my recap of the reunion, but let me know in the comments. What did you think of this finale, Danielle and Brittany's banishments, and the 4 winners? If you like this video, consider liking and subscribing. I'm also recapping Survivor 48, The Challenge All-Stars 5, and Deal or No Deal Island. Until next time, you know where to find me. Bye!